Hi, I'm Holly, and I'm going to be presenting on wealth distribution and immigration in America. So, whenever you tune into a political debate, it doesn't matter if it's presidential, gubernatorial, or even a primary debate, there's two issues that the mediator is almost guaranteed to bring up, and those two issues are wealth distribution and immigration. And the reason why these are such highly talked about issues is because they're both perceived to have major economic impacts on citizens of the United States. So firstly, the reason why wealth distribution is perceived to have such a huge impact economically on citizens is because wealth distribution is mainly done through welfare, and welfare is funded federally by tax dollars, which are then distributed to states through block grants. And attitudes towards tax rate depends on the way a person believes that their individual economic success will be affected. So more wealth distribution leads to more taxes, and attitudes towards more taxes depend on on an individual's economic success. So the way this ties into immigration, is that the economic impacts of immigrants play a huge role in U.S. citizens' attitudes on immigration. And how these both come together is that U.S.-born citizens believe that foreign-born people unfairly gain welfare. So if U.S.-born citizens believe that their individual economic success will be affected, they might be less likely to support immigration and also less likely to support welfare. So this led me to ask the question, is there a link between individual support for more expensive welfare in the United States and their attitudes towards immigration? So the literature that I reviewed to try to find some responses to that question was the majority of immigrants coming into America are non-white minorities, which then has an effect on an individual's support for welfare because people tend to be more sympathetic towards individuals of the same race. And if most of the immigrants coming into America are non-white and the majority of Americans are white, then they're probably not going to be sympathetic towards them through welfare. And then another thing that also affects individuals' support for wealth distribution would be stereotypes in the discourse about the news of welfare because people's attitudes towards immigration. Media outlets tend to overrepresent the idea that there are illegal immigrants who are taking advantage of Americans' welfare system when in reality most legal immigrants are not receiving welfare, but it still affects Americans' perception on welfare and if they should increase spending or not. So, although there is a link between immigrants and welfare, it doesn't explain if this link happens at the county level where people are actively living with the immigrants and are more likely to be affected by them. Additionally, this living with immigrants was also done at the national level to see if people living with immigrants. It was done cross-nationally. So countries where the immigrants' population grew rapidly experienced lower rates of support for growth in social spending than countries that saw less population growth. So it does show a link that if you live in an area with immigrants, you are less likely to have growth in social spending. But this one doesn't tackle people's attitudes towards welfare spending, which is something I'm looking at, not the spending itself. and it's also done cross-nationally. So it could just mean in all of America, where there could be countries where, counties where people aren't actively seeing an influx of immigration, so this wouldn't really apply to them. Additionally, another study showed that there was linkage between individuals' immigration attitudes and their welfare attitudes, meaning that people who have anti-immigration attitudes are likely not to support expensive welfare policies. And this was on state to state, it was found, but once again, if you live in Philadelphia County of Pennsylvania, for example, you could see a lot of immigrants, but if you live in the middle of, I'm just trying to think of a random county in Pennsylvania, you might not see any immigrants. So state level, once again, doesn't really get into people's attitudes towards supporting more expansive welfare. So my theory and hypothesis was trying to find a link between immigration attitudes and support for welfare spending. So I said that individuals' racial attitudes were the causal mechanism for this, and that individuals' attitudes of immigration at the county level, because this gives context to their racial attitudes due to the fact that if immigrants are living in your county, not just in your state or not just in your country, you're more likely to be directly affected by them. Which is why those last two studies sort of did show that this happens, but it really didn't show that it happens at the county level. So this led me to my hypothesis of the higher the percentage of immigrants in a respondent's county, the less likely the respondent will be to support an expansive distribution of wealth done through welfare policies. So for my data methods section, I did a cross-sectional analysis of individuals in different counties across the United States, and I decided to use 500 people from 350 counties across America. And I used a combination of survey and observational data. So for the observational data is through the independent variable, which is the percentage of immigrants in a respondent's county. And I took the total population of a respondent's county, which was found through the 2020 U.S. Census, and the number of immigrants in that same county. And that was found through my Migration Policy Institute Hub of 2020. And then you divide them and you get the percentage of immigrants in the respondent's county. And then for my survey data is the dependent variable, which is support for a more expansive distribution of wealth. And I got the survey from Harris X, which says, thinking about social programs like Medicaid, food stamps, Social Security, etc., should the government spend more money on social programs or less money on social programs, or is the current spending on social programs about right? Obviously, I would add a question about what county they lived in to connect it to the counties. And then I also used the Harris X survey because they already implemented controls, which is gender, religion, race, ethnicity, income, political party, and education. And the reason I decided to make these the controls is because it's highly likely that all of these have an effect on a person's attitude towards immigration and welfare, or towards welfare. I apologize. So I'd be using, because of the controls, I'd be using a multivariate regression analysis in order to make a causal claim that only the percentage of immigrants in a respondent's county will influence their support of social spending, not any of these. And then I will use logit regression because my dependent variable is categorical, and it's survey data that is answered through a yes increase or no don't increase. And the previous slide, is the current spending about right? That'd be an NA answer. So, in conclusion, I think that my hypothesis would be confirmed, obviously, which would then be generalized to all of America, that the same, that all of America has the same attitudes towards an increase in welfare spending, depending on the percentage of immigrants in their county. It could be, that could be what's called distributed or generalized through all of the counties in America, not just the 350 surveyed. And the policy implications that this would have is that maybe if people believe that their own economic interests would not be affected through an increase in social spending, would be to tax the mega rich, because the majority of Americans are not in the top 1%. So it's possible that they would not, their opinion would change on, what's it called? Their opinion would change about social spending, of welfare, social spending, yeah. Or another policy implication was universal public assistance programs, so they don't think that immigrants are unfairly taking advantage of the welfare if we did universal, because everyone would have a chance. Thank you.